G'day, Bomber fans. Well, recently you guys asked me some questions about the draft. Today I'm going to answer them. Let's just waste no time and get into it. Starting with a pretty general question from Mr. Moby. What do you consider our three biggest needs are in this draft, and can we find solutions for those needs in this draft? That is a good question. That is a very good question. It's a tough one to answer because let's face it, right? Essendon are stinky. We're a stinky poo-poo team. We play stinky poo-poo football. No offense, but you know we're rebuilding. Of course we do. And because of that, it's pretty hard to find three or narrow it down to three needs. Like I think there's quite a lot that the Bombers do need all over the ground. So if I'm thinking about it, you know, from a draft viewpoint and what we need in this draft, I'm going to say number one is just talent. I think we need to be getting talented players on our list. I know that's a very vague way of looking at it, but it's also just true. Like, and I think with picks 5 and 6 in a draft, and with a draft so even, where lots of teams are going to be attacking what they need for their list, I think the Bombers can really luck out potentially, even with later picks as well, and take players that are, you know, we think are very talented. It doesn't matter if they're a forward, a defender, a midfielder. I don't think the Bombers need to be attacking, you know, midfielders with our early picks. We do need midfielders, but I think what we need more so than anything is talent. So with pick 5 in the draft, that's why I really like Xavier Taylor if he slides. I know the Bombers might not take him, but you know, someone with talent. I look at the four horsemen of the draft apocalypse: Sullivan Robey, Willem Dersma, Cooper Duff-Tytler, and Xavier Taylor. I just think those four are more talented than those around them. If we can take any of those four, I'm happy. You know, that's what I'm looking at with pick 5 is upside and talent. And I think you've got a bit of variety with what you can do with picks 5 and 6 as well. So the number one need, I think, is talent. I know that's vague. I know you guys don't want to hear that, but I think it's just true. Number 2, we're going to be a bit more structure orientated, and this is where you're going to find differences in opinion. You know, some will say we need contest midfielders. Some will say we need big key forwards. I think something we need to address in this draft is transition footy, both offensively and defensively. I'm not saying every pick has to be a good ball user or a good defender, but I think one or two players should excel in this area. And luckily, I think Adam Sweid is one of them. I think he's a very good transition footballer, but I think we need something else there as well. We need a few players, one or two even, who just excel in moving the footy forward or defending a moving footy. I think if there are, you know, there's a few areas of needs that I think we can just skip over in this draft. Like I wouldn't be unhappy if we don't address our need for a key defender or our need for, you know, a contest midfielder. I think what we do need to address is a need for a good transition footballers, because that is the way the modern game is going. So I think if we take one or two players that excel in that area, I would be very happy. That's something I think we really need. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to be vague with number 3, but I think we just need a variety of different players. Like, you know, even just then, I'm talking about how we need transition footballers. I'd probably be pretty pissed off if we take 5, you know, medium-sized transition footballers. We need a variety of picks. We need, you know, a few differences in players. We need some, you know, maybe key position players. We need some ground level players. We need some who are going to excel at the contest, some who excel at transition footy. You know, maybe it's even height, you know, taller players, smaller players, inside out. You need a variety. You know, you're drafting for the future. You're not going to have 5, you know, of the same players going forward in the future. That's a good way to delist some of them early. I'd be annoyed if we took 5 midfielders in this draft, even though we need midfielders. So yeah, I think you need a variety of players, and I know that's a very vague way of looking at it. Again, I apologize, but I think when you're a team like Essendon, who are just stinky poo-poo, further down the ladder than other teams, you know, rebuilding, there's so much we need to fix, so much we need to address. You can't really narrow it down to, you know, any one thing with the 5 picks. You can be a bit more flexible. That's the good thing about it. You can be flexible like Richmond were last year, and then when you start building with that talent, then you can be a bit more specific. But I think the Bombers need a variety of different types of players. Russell says he saw an interview with Dyson Sharp, who comes across as a very determined and passionate person. That is true. He's an Essendon supporter, also true. I think we should seriously consider him in the draft. Your thoughts? I agree. I think we should be, and you guys would know, all year I've been, I don't want to say anti-Dyson Sharp because I still really like him and I'd be happy with him at the Bombers, but I am probably less hyped on Dyson Sharp than others around. Like that's just the facts. I think there is less of a ceiling with Dyson Sharp than other prospects, but that's why I think it's fun because, for example, if Essendon had one top 10 pick, I probably wouldn't want it being used on Dyson Sharp because, as I said, I think there's less of a ceiling. But because we've got 2 back-to-back, what we can do is attack a higher upside player, you know, a Xavier Taylor, Sullivan Robey if he's available. You could even argue Sam Cumming is in that bracket as well, and then bank on a Dyson Sharp who is, yes, lower ceiling, but higher floor. You know what you're going to get with Dyson Sharp. When he enters the competition and plays in round 1, he's going to be not close, but he's going to be looking like the player he could be in 5 to 6 years' time. He's going to be a good footballer. Will he be an elite footballer? I don't know. That's the question, but he's going to be good. I think we know that. So yeah, he's definitely someone we should consider. And I think he's someone for that reason who is probably in line to be picked for us. Like I think at this stage, I'm guessing Dyson Sharp is one of the players picked at 5 or 6, and that's because he's a bankable midfielder, something we need, a good leader, definitely someone we should consider. I have no issues with the Bombers taking Dyson Sharp. I think it would be very good if we can take a high upside player and Dyson Sharp. Can you see us making any surprises in this year's draft, like drafting someone out of nowhere? That is from Jezelenko, who I think has been involved in every Q&A video. Thank you, mate. Yeah, 100%. This is a draft where there are going to be some surprises. Like even the list of invites to night 1, seeing Cameron Nairn's name up there it's surprising because, you know, many rate him in the 30 to 40 range, but Melbourne really like him with the picks after us. Like there's a chance he's a top 15 or top 10 player in this draft because Melbourne really like him. That is random. That is a surprise. That's a surprise pick. You've got so many bolters in this draft. The high talent, the high end of the draft, the talent isn't there as much. So you're starting to see bolters come earlier than they would in other drafts. And I think that's good for Essendon because we do have higher picks that we can use. Like, you know, I don't think we're going to be surprising anyone with our early picks, but later on in the teens, we 100% could be. Will I tell you who that is? No, because if we knew, it wouldn't be a surprise. There's definitely options though. I think every club is going to be looking at someone who other clubs won't be, and that's the really fun thing about this draft. Once you get into the teens, I think it's going to be a little bit of chaos. Odds on Sully sliding to us, that is of course Sullivan Robey. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think it's probably unlikely though. I think, you know, you're looking at a player who's just probably more talented than those around him, and that's, again, with early picks in the draft, you're going talent, and I think Richmond are going a bit rogue, possibly with a Sam Grlj, who other clubs, you know, don't rate in that bracket, but because of that, they're going to have someone who they have as a higher upside player, a bit more talented. Some would point at what they did last year, drafting Sam Lawler and Josh Smiley, and maybe that would steer them away from drafting a similar type of player, but I think, you know, you've got Josh Smiley who's having injury issues. Sullivan Robey he's not locked down to being a midfielder, so yeah, I think they probably take him, to be honest, the Tigers. There's a chance he slides. I'm going to say it's a 70% chance he ends up at Richmond. It obviously depends on what happens with West Coast selection. It depends if they go for Sam Grlj or not. Maybe they like Xavier Taylor more. Yeah, I hope he slides to the Bombers, but I'm going to guess right now I don't think he will. If we traded up to pick 2, would you take CDT or Robey? That is from James. I'd be taking Sullivan Robey personally, but I could argue there's an argument for both. Like they're really different players, and again, that's, you know, this is the fun thing about if we had earlier picks, by the way, but this wouldn't be just a needs base, a talent pick. It would be a needs base as well. Like these are two really talented players, and I'd only really take Robey because we probably need a midfielder more than a ruckman. Some would argue we need a ruckman more. I get that. Draper's gone, but I personally think Robey, you know, very similar types of prospects, very similar, you know, talent range and what they could be in the future. Both, you know, if they excel, they would be game breaking, game changing. You could argue CDT more so, given how important rucks are going to be in the modern game. But yeah, I personally prefer Sullivan Robey as a prospect. Alex asks, how would packaging any of 21, 27, and 30 to trade up in the draft order affect our ability to match bids for Sweid or El Achkar? Guys, my hay fever is absolutely killing me, by the way. Yeah, so I think what the Bombers are going to be doing is really, I think we're going to be having a range where we will match a bid on these guys and a range where we won't. And I don't think we're going to be preparing too much for anything outside of that range. I don't think we're going to have, you know, a million picks in the 30s and 40s to match bids. We might trade down a little bit. I like the idea of, you know, getting a 36 off Gold Coast and, you know, pick 18. I think that could really benefit the club because 36 will be a good pick to match a bid on Adam Sweid. But even, you know, if a pick came before a Hussein bid, I think we'd probably take a player that we like more. I think there's every chance we don't take one of these players, and I think that's the way it should be. I don't think players should be locked into, you know, these academy players because they're in their academy, especially players in this range of the draft, the 20 to 30 range. So yeah, I think the Bombers won't think too much about matching the bid, you know, and put too much, or they'll put effort into it, but not over exhaust themselves doing that. I think we'll probably just try and have the best draft hand that we can have. And a good way to do that is both moving up and down the order. Like I said, you know, picks 21 and 27 to Gold Coast for picks 18 and 36 not only moves us up the order, but it gives us potential to match a bid as well. So there's definitely ways we can kind of, you know, kill two birds with one stone. Should we trade pick 6 and 21 and 30 for Carlton's pick 9 and 11? How likely is it? Where do you think a Dean bid will come? And also, can live trading occur during a bid? To answer each question individually, I don't think we should. I think what the Bombers, well, I'll explain that in a bit. I'll first go to the other questions. When will a Harry Dean bid come? I think it could be us, to be honest. I think it'd be us or West Coast early. I don't know if Richmond act on that. They'd probably be going for... There's a few academy players early, and clubs won't be, bidding. I think the Bombers could be the club bidding on Harry Dean. Can a live trade occur during a bid? Yes, it can. So if a club needs, points, if, let's say, West Coast bid on pick 1 for Harry Dean, Carlton can then scramble to get points required. Should we trade those picks? I don't think we should. I think what we should be doing if it was Harry Dean, and if you watched my mock draft the other night on the Twomey and Oz channel, you'll see an example, is waiting and seeing, like Carlton might do. They might hold on to picks 9 and 11, and if that's the case and a bid comes, or a bid doesn't come and Essendon are on the clock, we can be a bit creative and try and, move up the order, get one of those selections and help Carlton in the process. I'll talk about this in a future video, but there is 100% a win-win scenario for both these teams if clubs don't bid on Harry Dean. Why do you think Callum Twomey is known as Cal rather than Lum? That's question of the day, and that's the real question. That's what we got to be asking ourselves. Why is that? And I think that's on us. I think we should start calling him Lum now. Who's the most likely player to slide that Essendon could, would, or should be trading up to get? And this is a good question because there's someone I've been thinking about a lot in this regard, and it's Mr. Aiden Schubert. I've been doing a few mock drafts because I'm a nerd, and Aiden Schubert's someone who just, if he isn't picked up by Melbourne early, he's someone who could really slide down the order. You look at the clubs picking after Melbourne and Essendon. GWS don't need key forwards. Hawthorn don't need key forwards. Carlton will probably go for someone else. The Bulldogs will probably go for someone else. Adelaide have got quite a few key forwards. There's actually quite a few clubs who could be passing on Aiden Schubert if he's available. That's the thing. He could go into the 20s, even though he's probably closer to a top 10 prospect. And again, that's just the way this draft is. Clubs will be going needs-based rather than talent a lot more, especially teams higher up the ladder. So you might find, plenty of clubs pass over Schubert just because of his position, even though he is more talented than the players that they might be picking. That's the really fun thing about this draft. So, yeah, there's 100% a world where the Bombers, even though we're keen on Aiden Schubert with one of our early picks, apparently, I don't think it's too keen, we might be taking him later in the draft if he's available. So he's the player I'd be watching out for, and that'd be a great result, by the way, if we're able to get, a midfielder or two early and then Aiden Schubert with our third pick. That would be fantastic. I know this might disappoint you, but is there any point in going for Harley Barker when we have Dersma, Fiorini, and Clark, other wingmen? It does disappoint me. You should be taking a good, long, hard look at yourself in the mirror and wondering why you asked that question, because I don't like it. But also I agree. I think myself, I think it's hard for me to separate my love for Harley Barker as a footy fan and what the Bombers need in this draft. I think there are probably... You could argue about 10 to 15 other players that, the Bombers should be taking over Harley Barker because they're what we need. Again, as I said, needs basis. Clubs are going to be drafting on a needs basis more. With our early picks, we're going to be going best available talent. But if we're, on the clock at pick 15 or 20, would we be, if Harley Barker's available, would we be taking him over someone like Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves or Lockie Doveston or Aiden Schubert, like I said before? Even though I prefer Barker as a draft prospect in general, I think there's 100% an argument to be made that there are other players we should be taking ahead of him. In saying that, I'd be more than happy if he was drafted to the Bombers, but yeah, I think I personally don't think he will be. I think there are other clubs that'll like him a bit more. GWS, North Melbourne maybe, Hawthorn even. I think with Harley Barker, he's someone that we take if he's available at a good price. If we're later in the draft and Harley Barker's there, we'll say, stuff it, let's take him. I don't think he's someone we're going to trade up for. And just on that, actually, from the Joe Bogan experience, what are the chances of us making trades with our later picks, and who would we be targeting in that range alongside your boy Harley Barker? So as I said, I don't think we'd be trading up specifically for a player like Harley Barker because he's not exactly what the Bombers need. I think if we were looking to trade up, it would be for someone sliding that we need. Jacob Farrow, for example, a good ball user. Josh Lindsay, another one like that. Someone, something that we need, good transition footballers. Aiden Schubert, like I said before. So yeah, there's 100%, I think we would definitely be trading up if we can for a player that we like after picks 5 and 6, obviously. But I don't think it would be for Harley Barker. I think there's a few. Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves in that forward half is someone that I think the Bombers, there hasn't been much talk about that, but could like. Even Lockie Doveston, that would obviously mess with the plans for NGA duo, but there's quite a few in that teens range. After like pick 10 or 11, you get to a range where it's really even, and there's going to be some sliders, and that's where the Bombers could definitely act with those later picks and trade up the order. Campbell asks if I can list all the players that I've ranked above Sweid and El Achkar for Essendon so we can analyse at what point we would match bids or we would let them stand? I love that as a question, by the way, because that's kind of what the draft whiteboard is, and it's fascinating. It's a really hard question to answer, though, because it really depends on what you've picked. So let's say we miss out on midfielders and Ollie Greeves is available later in the draft. We would 100% take Ollie Greeves over Adam Sweid. But if we were to take Dyson Sharp early in the draft, there would be no reason to take Ollie Greeves over Adam Sweid. It really depends on what's available, what we've already got on our list in those early picks. So it's a great question, and I love it, but it's a hard one to answer for that reason. What I will say is I think there's a range of the draft where a bid is just no point matching because of the price you'd be paying. I think anything before, pick 20 even. I look at Fremantle, who've got their pick in the 20s, or I think it'll slide to the 20s. That's, I think, where it starts. And that's where I think a bid could come. But anything before that, you're looking at paying a lot. And that's the issue with, this draft, because we want to be taking the best players we can take. And will we be doing that if we have to pay overs for an Adam Sweid bid? Probably not. And then you go to Hussien El Achkar, who could really slide down the order. I think he's someone who's probably slept on. In many ways, he's probably a more valuable player in this draft because he's cheaper, or probably cheaper. We don't know when a bid will come, but I'm suspecting somewhere after the 30s. But Adams, yeah, it's tough. It's a great question. I love it, but it is tough. What I will say is anything before pick 20, that's when you're looking at, spending quite a lot. But when you get into that range in the 20s, it's a bit easier to find picks to match bids, and you can do that a bit easier. So that's what I'll say. Just on that, Rick Edwards, great. By the way, Rick Edwards, just go subscribe to his Patreon if you haven't already. He is one of the smartest Essendon fans going around right now. How do you rate Hussien El Achkar in this year's crop of small forwards? It's a bit of a different question because it's more specific to the position. And I think it's a really interesting one because it kind of shows you how Huss has slid down orders. Like at the start of the year, he was almost a top 20 prospect. Going as the year goes, Adam Sweid overtakes him. Me personally, I think it's really even between the two. But yeah, Adam Sweid overtakes him. Lockie Doverston's obviously overtaken him. You then have Latrell Pickett coming late and Leon Kickett as well from WA, mature prospects. And I think the fact that there are two mature prospects overtaking him probably shows that there is less of a want for a player like Hussien El Achkar. I don't think clubs are going to be lining up to draft him or bid on him because because there are others around. So yeah, I think he's probably in that top 4 or 5 range of the small forwards. I'd probably have those other guys ahead of him, but I think it's really even. I think Lockie Doverston's set himself apart, in my opinion. After that, I personally don't see much of a difference between Sweid and El Achkar in the long term, because I think Sweid probably has... Well, he's a tougher player to read. He's, a bit more, there's a bit more scope because there's a bit more positional versatility. But in that respect, you don't know what he's going to be and you don't know how successful he'll be. Like in the VFL, for example, I thought Hussien looked better because I think he has a more defined position, a more defined role in the AFL. I think if Sweid fails to be what we think he could be, there's less he could be, if you get what I mean. But Hussien El Achkar, I think we know that he's going to be a little handy small forward at worst. He's kind of that Willie Rioli type. He can't really go anywhere else. I don't personally see him going through the midfield. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting little combo because they are pretty different despite being similar positions. This is a great question. So if Sam Grlj is a unique blend of speed and endurance, and so many have him at Richmond's picks, why does consensus also seem like we wouldn't take him if he slides? And I love that. That's from Silvertop Hurley. And it just sums up this draft perfectly. I think Sam Grlj sums up this draft to a T because I think there are probably 10 or 11 or 12 teams who, if they had Richmond's picks, wouldn't even consider Sam Grlj. For example, I think if Sam Grlj isn't picked by Richmond, the Bombers don't take him. I'm not even sure if Melbourne would take him. But Richmond with picks 3 and 4 might be taking him. It's crazy to think this guy could go as high as 3 in the draft and as low as 14 or 15. Again, that is just because clubs will be taking players that they need a lot more. So Richmond, for example, they drafted really well last year. They have the freedom to do what they want a bit. I think they're going to take a high upside player and a needs-based player, and Sam Grlj for them is that needs-based player. He is quick, he is fit, he is athletic. He maybe lacks a bit in foot skills, but I think they've gone pretty well with Taj Hodden and other types to Luke Trainer to try and fix that out of the back half. So Sam Grlj is going to be that line-breaking player with speed alone. Why I think the Bombers wouldn't take him, I just think there are players we like more. I think if he was available in the teens, we would probably act, because he is something that we would like, but I just think there are players that the Bombers like more, and for good reason, by the way. I think there are definitely better prospects this year than Sam Grlj. He's really exciting. I love a lot of what he can do. For me, he's a top 15 or so, or top 15 or 20 prospect in this draft. For Richmond's fans, saying he's a top 5 prospect, that's completely fine, because that's what the club needs, and that is why this draft is going to be so fascinating. On pure football ability, who looks like the best player out of Ollie, Greeves, Adam Sweid, and Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves? That is a really random trio, but I love it. Who is the best? I'd probably say Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves of the three is the best pure footballer or pure draft prospect. I think he's got, I think both him and Adam Sweid both have that positional scope in that they're, more so Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves. I think he is more a footballer than anything. If you were to ask someone what position you think Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves will play in the AFL, they wouldn't be able to tell you. That's the beauty of Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves. That's also a reason I didn't like him earlier in the year. I wasn't a fan of Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves until I saw him live, because when I saw him live, I saw him act as a pseudo-key forward 1 minute, then he was up on the wing the next, and he was playing on a forward flank. He's got real scope and versatility in what he can be at the AFL. That means that there is a lot that he won't be, because, there's, like with Nick Cox, sometimes you draft a footballer and it doesn't all work out. So there's a bit of a risk attached to that. But I think because of that, it's, there's a bit of fun with it too. You just got to give it a go. Whereas someone like Ollie Greeves is a big-bodied midfielder. If he's something else, it's a surprise. Adam Sweid is a midfielder forward, probably a small forward linking player. If he's something else, it's probably a surprise as well. I think Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves is the most fascinating draft prospect, and for that reason, I'm always going to lean towards him a little bit more, because there's a bit of fun attached. But I think as a pure footballer, Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves, Adam Sweid, or Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves, Adam Sweid, Ollie Greeves. Oh, you know what? Noah Hibbins-Hargraeves, Ollie Greeves, Adam Sweid. It's tough. It's tough. Apart from Gresham, we have no other First Nation players on our list. Any likely types for this draft? That is from Stephen. It is just a crappy thing going on in the AFL right now. There was a real boom, I think, in the 2019-20 range when the AFL added NGAs, Next Generation Academies. Since then, it's gone down again, and I don't know why it is. I think the AFL can probably, put a bit more time and effort and funds into this. There's been talk that they're potentially considering adding a rule where clubs have to have a First Nation player on their list, maybe as like a Category B rookie, which I know many will hate because everyone's angry, but I personally don't mind it. I think these guys are more exciting. They're better for football. If I'm looking at the more exciting prospects in this draft, I mean, two of them are Leon Kickett and Latrell Pickett. I don't think we'd be taking them because they're a bit, in that similar range of the draft to Sweid and Huss, while also being similar positions. So, would you take one of those players with a pick rather than matching bids on the others? Probably not. So I think we won't be taking any this year. In the future, I don't think we've got any really of note linked to our academy. I think Colin McGrath is, I'll talk about him, but yeah, unfortunately it is just an issue that the AFL is facing right now that they do need to fix pretty soon. And finally, Dan the Man asks what our best and worst case scenario for picks 5 and 6 are. He says personally, Robey and Sharp are the best, and Schubert and Farrow will be the worst case scenario. I mean, realistically, we're in a position where, the best case scenario is that someone we really like slides to us. Like, CDT, Sullivan Robey, Xavier Taylor, any of the 4 horsemen of the draft apocalypse. I don't know why I'm still going on with that, by the way. But if any of those 4 slide to us, that is the best case scenario. We're getting someone with real talent, real upside, and we compare them with someone like a Dyson Sharp, who's a bit more bangable, and we'd be taking, if it wasn't the best case scenario anyway. I think that's a really, really good spot to be in. The fact that we are, we're waiting to see what comes to us, and if something good comes, we're going to act on it. That is the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that that doesn't happen. And if that doesn't happen, we're probably still going to take 2 of the best midfielders in the draft anyway. Like, there's a fair chance we end up with Sam Cumming and Dyson Sharp on our list. If that's the case, I'm not complaining. I don't think anyone would be complaining. Like, realistically, we're in a position where the worst thing that could happen is that we take the 5th and 6th best ranked players in this draft. That is the position that the Bombers are in. That's fantastic. It's an incredible spot to be in, and that's why it's a really exciting draft for the Bombers. We've got a really exciting draft haul on our hands. Yeah, I mean, I guess the worst case scenario would be a misclick. We go to pick Dyson Sharp and we accidentally, redraft Dyson Heppel at age 35. That would be a bit unfortunate with pick 5. But yeah, I think it's a great spot for the club to be in. I think it's a great draft, and I'm really excited for it. But unfortunately, guys, that is all. I really wish I could stick around and answer all your questions, but unfortunately, as it is, I'm getting told off in the comments by you guys for yapping on too much. If I was here answering all the questions, it'd be hours, it'd be days. days, it'd be weeks, but we don't have time because in less than a week the draft is on. It is next Wednesday now. That is in just a few days. Really exciting. And by the way, just for you guys, so you know what my movements are on draft week. Stick around because on Wednesday I will be over with Fiona on Bomber Banter reacting to the draft night 1 live with her. That should be great. So head in there because it's going to be a big night for the Bombers and our future. And then night 2, probably not as big for the Bombers, but big for the draft in general and a lot of fun. I will be on the True Footy channel with Dylan and Jesse. We will be reacting to night 2 of the draft. I will also be on some other channels during the week as well, but those are the main ones. Night 1 with Fiona on Bomber Banter, night 2 on True Footy with Jesse and Dylan. But yeah, cheers guys. Again, thank you for the questions. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. You are all very intelligent. You're very fun. I love answering your questions. It gets me thinking, which I really like doing. I like thinking. But that is all. Stick around. Plenty more draft content to come in the next few days. Cheers for the questions. Cheers for watching. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And as always, go Bombers.